So McLaren for the third time in a row took pole position.
Defensive shift.
Oh my God! This is what he does! This is what he flipping does! It's illegal!
That qualifying lap was something special from Max. Bro decided to say screw it and go full send. Everybody was stunned by how out of nowhere his lap was. But I don't know, I wasn't that surprised to be honest. Cause 1, it's Max. 2, his track record at Suzuka is stellar. In the ground effect era, he has never not been on pole at this circuit. Obviously, he did have dominant cars in those years, but his driving has always made a big difference in the sheer scale of that dominance. And 3, Red Bull have typically gone well at this track. They just had a few teething issues to start with in practice. Max complained a lot about understeer on Friday, and they struggled to get the car into a good window. But then, in classic Red Bull fashion, they managed to turn it all around within the space of a day. One thing you can never, ever do is count them out or believe that they're defeated, because that's never the case. To do this in Honda's final race at Japan with Red Bull and Max after so many years of success was just the icing on the cake. And real quick, I just want to say, these photos went so hard. The white livery, the white helmet, the white suit, everything.
I gotta tell you, it was perfect. Perfect. Everything, down to the last minute details.
Watching Max solo both McLarens, the engineers must have been like,
We cannot replace him. We cannot.
Yuki's pace was pretty decent throughout the weekend to be fair. His run in Q2 was compromised by some tyre warm-up issues, but in his own words, at least the confidence in the car feels good now. That should bode well once he fully gets up to speed with how to properly treat the tyres on the outlap. He was about half a second off Max on that Q2 run, which was enough to knock him out given how close F1 is in the moment. But on the whole, having switched to a car that's not very nice to drive in the middle of the season with minimal preparation time, it's not the end of the world. You also got to remember, in the lead up to qualifying, he wasn't that far off Verstappen and adapted very quickly. Now Max did unleash an absolute blinder of a lap in Q3, so who knows what the gap would have been if Tsunoda made it to the final round. But overall, first quali was kind of okay, and hopefully he settles in better the more experience he gets with the car. Although, just because he got out qualified by Lawson, I'm seeing people talk about BBC, bring back Checo.
No, I don't think I will.
That qualifying lap effectively secured victory for Verstappen. Even though the McLarens were faster, being in clean air helped a lot. Also, overtaking in Japan isn't very easy, especially if you don't have a big tyre offset over the car ahead. We'll get onto the McLaren's second bottle of the weekend in a bit, but first, you've got to take your hat off to Max. What this guy is to McLaren is what LeBron was to the Toronto Raptors. Despite the fight being a 2v1, he still comes out on top. It was another supreme drive from the reigning world champion, who now sits just 1 point behind Norris in the championship. If Red Bull managed to develop the car to a point where it's at least on par with the McLaren, it's so over. But while we're on the topic of the RB21 real quick, can we put the 5th fastest car gimmick to bed now? Just because they were P8 in practice doesn't mean all the car performance is just gone. They had a difficult Friday, but 99% of the time, they find a way to fix their issues before qualifying and the race. And with Max behind the wheel, you're almost always going to see the car's full potential. I mean, he just knows how to squeeze out every drop of performance. Truly a brilliant weekend from him. He delivered a fitting sign-off to a very successful partnership with Honda in their final Japanese Grand Prix together. And who knows, Honda have been vocal to work with Verstappen again. You can probably see where this is going. Tsunoda made up some places, but honestly, there wasn't much he could have done since dirty air affected everyone so much. Pirelli actually need to pay, bro. How are these tyres robust enough to last an entire 53-lap race, but can't take being pushed for just 1 lap in qualifying? Anyway, Japan proved that Yuki is definitely an upgrade from Lawson, and next time out in Bahrain, hopefully we'll see him improve. And now, time for the McLaren drivers. Was it a bottle, or was Max just him? Well, it was a bit of both. Who says two things can't be true at the same time? Piastri lost all of his time in Sector 1, and Norris basically lost pole through the final corner, since he braked 25 meters earlier than Verstappen. Essentially, Max was willing to take more risk, since the car really only had the pace for the second row. It should have been an easy McLaren front row lockout, but they were either too conservative or so focused on beating each other that they didn't even consider Max to be a threat before he snatched both of their chains. Also, one thing I gotta point out is the new ghost graphics F1 have been posting are very cold. You can really see exactly where the McLaren gains, which is how good the balance is through medium speed corners. The Red Bull has always been mighty through the high speed, and for this race in particular, Max opted for a lower downforce rear wing to be quicker on the straights. But under traction, that McLaren is just in another league. It's all very fine margins, but overall, the papaya cars should have been 1-2. And that's what cost them the race win in the end. That, and potentially not letting Oscar pass in the second stint, where he gained a lot of time on Norris and was within DRS for a while. Obviously he lets the team know that he's quicker, but they don't do anything about it. Smells like a bit of favoritism, but that's just me. If Lando were in that position, I'm pretty sure McLaren would have told Oscar to move aside. Given how difficult overtaking proved to be though, I doubt Oscar would have been able to get past. But since they didn't even try, I guess we'll never know. I actually don't know what Lando was doing this race. The pit crew gave him such a good stop that he just gained a second on Max without doing anything. But then he decided to throw it all down the toilet by using his car as a lawnmower. And then he had the audacity to claim that Max forced him off. Buddy, that ain't gonna work. Every time I think this guy is serious, he goes and does stuff like this. It's honestly crazy to watch how badly McLaren fumble the bag sometimes. They have a car that should be getting pole, should be winning the race, but keep making mistake after mistake. I thought that maybe this will be the last time they bottle, only for them to pull the Vince Carter. The only thing I can say as a crumb of comfort for them is that Suzuka is a track that suits the Red Bull and Max very well. So in Bahrain, where I expect them to have a bigger advantage, any mistakes they make will likely be hidden by the extra pace they have in hand. But once you give someone like Max even a sniff of an opportunity, he's gonna capitalize on it, which is what McLaren overall lacks. The pit wall and the drivers. The mechanics are normally on the ball, but Norris decided to sell. And if Piastri wanted an opportunity to get at Max, he should have qualified better. Equally, McLaren could have temporarily swapped the two cars and then swapped back at the end if Piastri couldn't get past. But anyway, that's enough of them for now, time for Mercedes. Someone said that George Russell looks like he's from Lazy Town, and I can't unsee it now. The media also kept asking him questions about his contract renewal since they're so obsessed about the never-ending story that Max is going to Mercedes. But George has just been letting his driving do the talking. Qualifying was a little bit disappointing since he showed a lot of great pace in the lead up to Q3. His first run was solid, but then these bipolar Pirellis, man, start acting out if they're 1 degree outside of the optimal temperature. Going slightly slower on his preparation lap meant Russell struggled on his final run with tyres that were too cold. Antonelli had a very strong lap though after difficulties in practice, and in the race managed to lead for a few laps, becoming the youngest race leader in F1 history. That first stint on the mediums from him was absolutely mighty. He was gapping Hamilton, who was on the more durable hard tyres and even stayed out longer. Then in the second stint, he was setting fastest lap after fastest lap, pushing like crazy. This dude has no chill. He ended the race only 1.3 seconds behind Russell. I honestly expected George to have a better race than he did. The Merc overall looked quicker than the Ferrari. But again, it's so difficult to overtake with dirty air. So he was just bottled up behind Leclerc during the first stint, then tried to undercut but came out in traffic so lost even more time. Overall, Mercedes had a decent weekend, but will need to go back to the drawing board to figure out where they're losing to McLaren and Red Bull. Same goes for Ferrari. Being a fan of Leclerc and Hamilton isn't easy, because we're literally either cooking or getting cooked. Whether it's being disqualified, issues with the car, or Sainz getting his lick back for being sent to Williams, it really is tough out here. Leclerc was exceptional on Saturday. With all the attention going to Verstappen's otherworldly lap, Charles deserves equally as much praise for how much he maximized the Ferrari. The support from Mini Charles though is what really did the trick. Lewis had a poor performance in quali, and that's about it. I'm not even going to try and defend this one. Neither am I going to try and defend his race pace. It was a weekend to forget for him. Leclerc actually over-delivered if anything in beating both Mercs. The Ferrari is not only a peaky car, but also generally just lacks pace in comparison to Red Bull and McLaren. About 2 to 3 tenths. Maybe the colder temperatures affected things, or some setup changes that didn't work on Lewis's side. Either way, a car cannot be that inconsistent and contend for the championship. And that was the hope going into the season. But evidently, it's not going as planned. This season, it's becoming more and more evident that qualifying is key. Starting higher up the order is important, and starting on pole is vital if you want to have any chance of winning. Imagine if this was the case in 2022 when Ferrari had the F175. That car was a one-lap beast with Charles driving it. But now, not only does the car lack outright speed, it's also bipolar. Anyway, we've got a new floor coming in Bahrain where our season officially starts, and that's where we'll bag the first of many Charles Lewis 1-2s. Lawson jumped straight into the V-Carb and qualified better than any of the sessions he's competed in this year, which goes to show that car is way easier to drive than the Red Bull. Liam said himself that the car's operating window is very good, and it's been fast so far. He made it through to Q2 for the first time in 2025, but his teammate, Mr. Petit Prost, stopped playing with my guy. That's 2 back-to-back P7s in qualifying. I'm noticing a trend here. Although it wasn't all plain sailing, his seatbelt became a lethal threat to his future bloodline. If you don't know what I'm referring to, he got his balls trapped in the seatbelt, and judging by how tight they need to secure those things for driver safety, I understand his pain. Racing balls? More like erasing balls. Luckily, that was at the start of Q1, and after coming back into the pits, he was able to get readjusted. And when it mattered most in Q3, he put together a gourmet meal of a lap. Only 14 thousandths off Antonelli in a Merc, out-qualifying Lewis in a Ferrari, And for once, the team didn't mess up the strategy as he finished the race in P8. Those hat joints hit different, I can't lie. Lawson didn't have the best time out there, finishing the race in 17th. The team left him out too long on the first stint, and he ended up getting caught in the do and train. Isaac though was just better and is really proving himself as one of the best among the current crop of rookies. Him, Antonelli and Behrman are the big three right now. And speaking of Ollie, that's another point in the bag. We've just covered 2 teams with cold liveries, and now it's time for the third. Haas dropping this absolute beauty. F1 needs to have every race in Japan, because this is pure art. Ocon didn't have a great qualifying and ended up 18th. Behrman though was actually a monster. Found a great rhythm from the word go and cooked up a Q3 appearance. What's becoming clear is that Ollie has great raw speed, similar to Isaac. Particularly with the machinery they have, it's impressive to see the heights they're reaching over a single lap. His race management was equally as impressive, coming home in P10. Ocon's weekend was one to forget. I don't know what happened to him, but he was just slow. Same with Lance Stroll, who decided to end his purple patch and try a bit of rallying, following in the footsteps of Alonso in FP2. That session was actually a joke. It was just red flag after red flag. The Aston Martin seems quite wind sensitive, since Lance went off due to a tailwind while going through the S's. It's also not that fast, since Alonso ending quali in 13th was the absolute maximum he could do. He just missed out on the points, finishing the race in 11th, and Stroll was last and lapped by the leaders. I actually don't know why he even decided to race. He was literally just out there sightseeing like it's a holiday. The other green team are still pretty slow. Hülkenberg got a tow from Max, which momentarily got him through to Q2 before he got displaced by Lawson, and Gabby was only a 10th behind. And the race wasn't much better. Again, the level of difficulty in overtaking hurt Bortoletto's chances of finishing higher, and the same thing with Hülkenberg when he was behind Doohan. Now initially everyone thought Jack was okay after a hefty crash in FP2, but in the end it cost him track time and confidence going into quali. He ended up P19 while Gasly was up in 11th, but managed to make a decent recovery to 15th. Being the second earliest driver to pit helped Jack to undercut those ahead of him, and then he held on for dear life at the end. And I mean that literally, because apparently he was a lot more injured after that crash than we thought. I guess he was trying to just firm the pain because Briatore is trying to find every reason to put someone else in the car. Sainz is still struggling with the car, meanwhile Alex is showing everyone why he's a force to be reckoned with. Also, what is Jacques Villeneuve on about? He said, the Williams has been competitive for years. Alex just didn't have a teammate to motivate him.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Bro just be saying anything. Why not just give Albon his flowers and move on? Like, what are these mental gymnastics? Also, Alex's confidence right now must be sky high, because I've never heard him crash out that much over the radio. I haven't heard him get that aggressive with his team, basically ever. But all that rage did though, was power him to another points finish. Maintaining P9 from qualifying was the maximum result he could have achieved. What's clear is that despite McLaren having the best car, they definitely won't have everything their own way. Max Verstappen is still a problem. And don't rule out George Russell either. His consistency is keeping him there or thereabouts. It will also be interesting to see whether the first round of upgrades for Mercedes and Red Bull bring them closer to the McLarens. Because if that happens, I have a feeling we'll see Verstappen and Russell back on the top step more frequently. If the RB21 becomes more drivable, then we should also see Tsunoda gain more confidence and might feature on the podium for the first time in his career. Ferrari are still pretty lost, with extreme fluctuations in their performance. So until their car becomes more predictable and less peaky, they won't be much of a threat. And hopefully in Bahrain, the race won't be so boring. Hope you all enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts about anything from the weekend down in the comment section below. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you're new to get my latest videos in the future. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.